Welcome to episode 113 of the Ben Briggs podcast. I am Ben Briggs. It is Tuesday's episode, people, but it is Wednesday, the 3rd of June, 2020. And I hope you're all doing well out there in the world. It's been a fucking funny old weekend. Well, like to put it lightly. Obviously, there's been fucking horrible events going over in the States with the death of George Floyd, as it was reported. That's how it's been reported as a death. I imagine you're all aware of this story anyway. It was reported as a death in the media, a death in police custody. That's not how I would describe it. I would fucking describe it as a fucking public execution at the hands of the police. That's pretty much, that's not pretty much what it was. That's what it was, wasn't it? So we're going to be discussing that in this episode. I'm going to fucking need a cup of tea for this. Let's have a little bit of tea just before we start going on about this. Anyway, apart from that, I hope you're all well in the world. I hope your lockdown is going well and shit like that. Let's have a little bit of tea. Now, with regards to this, obviously here on the Ben Briggs podcast, we are not averse to talking about sensitive issues or highlighting certain things within society. Hopefully, anyway, a little bit of background on this. George Floyd was obviously arrested by police and detained, and then a police officer fucking held him down on the ground for about 8.5 minutes by his fucking neck, kneeing him in the neck, and he fucking passed away. Now, I spoke to a few people about this, like a few friends and that sort of thing. It's just a horrific thing to happen, isn't it? And no matter what his background was, which is, there's always people saying about somebody's background or whatever your background is, or with regards to what you've done in the past or what crimes you may or may not have committed. I think we can all agree it's a fucking horrendous way for somebody to be killed, basically. The whole thing about it is that makes it worse, obviously. You've got that whole issue with the police and that sort of thing out in America, which is, like it seems to be a sort of like endemic within the police system out there. These are my views, by the way. This is what I'm putting forward. This is why I do this podcast, to put my views forward. You may agree or you may disagree with what I'm about to say. I am welcome to debate. I think one of the main problems with all of these situations that gets going is there seems to be no sort of grey area in between. People are shouting each other down from either side, and they never seem to meet in the middle. Or like just listen to anybody else's point of view. Immediately it gets shouted down. This is, the Twitter and the Facebook element of things coming in, isn't it? Yes, it's a good thing in the fact that it creates debate. But normally what happens is it'll immediately descend into an argument. One side will blame the other side will blame the other side, and I've never seen an argument on Twitter or Facebook or anything like that ever somebody has gone, actually, that's quite a good point you're making there, but have you considered it from this point of view or this point of view or whatever? It's just immediately blocked. You're in the wrong, I'm in the right. And, I'm not sure 120 characters on Twitter can really sum up racism. You know what I mean? I don't think it's going to help with that You know, I don't think we're going to cure racism with a fucking meme on Facebook, oddly enough. I understand the irony of me talking about this in a half-hour episode of a podcast. I understand that. Yeah, my hypocrisy is there as well. But obviously it's an issue that's been brought again to the forefront of with the Black Lives Matter campaign, and particularly the death of George Floyd, which a lot of people have been saying, I won't watch the video. It's disgusting. I don't want to see something like that. But I don't know. I'm the other side, and it's not a macabre part of my nature that seeks these things out. It's just that I think you need to watch it. I don't know. I think it gives the shocking nature of that video kind of brings it home more to a fucking white person sitting in a fucking chair in Northampton. It did for me anyway. Obviously you've got your own, your own limits and expectations of what you want to see on the internet, but yeah, I think like it gives a broad perspective of how horrendous that fucking was, and how brutal that totally is. Yeah, it's just harrowing watching that, and him calling for his mum and shit like that, and it's I don't know, man. It just seems to be, everybody says, oh well, that happens over in America and shit like that, but I don't know, man. Like, if our police had guns over here and shit, you hear about stuff every day. People dying in cells and stuff like that, and over here as well. So it's not just, it's easy to be blinkered, I think, and say that happens in the States or whatever, but we run into everyday racism over here in the UK as well. Just little things where, like, you pick up on it and you go, oh, fucking hell. You've only reacted against that person because, there's something very unsavory about how, that just seeps into sort of like everyday interactions between people. And, yeah, so that's the first part of it. We're not going to cure this, like, on the episode. We can discuss it if you want to discuss it afterwards or whatever, or you don't agree with me, or you've got points to make that I haven't made properly, which I imagine will fucking happen. Yeah, it's just, it's a catalyst, isn't it? Like, I saw an interview, who was it? Candace Owens. I saw her statement she made. She's not particularly popular within the Black Lives movement, but Black Lives Matter movement, sorry. And I saw her saying, he wasn't a particularly great guy. He was, like, apparently a criminal. He's been in prison on and off for a long time and stuff like that. But even so, I think that, whatever sort of person he has been in the past. And I think the point she was making was that this is not the martyr that the Black Lives Matter community need right now, or he's not a good martyr for the cause or whatever. But his death has certainly been a catalyst for demonstrations and bringing that movement to the forefront again, like through this, like. We've all been living in lockdown, like in every single fucking country in the world for the last, 12 weeks, something like that. And everybody seems to have gone a little more insular. I know we're still all applauding for the NHS and we're doing all that sort of thing, but these things are still out there, and they're still, they're still out there, and they still need to be dealt with, and we still need to sort these situations out from happening again. It's obviously within the States there seems to be, I just don't understand. What I don't understand about it is just the fucking, the whole thing about police, black people dying in police custody and that sort of shit, you'd have thought they'd be extra fucking careful with everybody. You know, like, of all, you know, just anybody dying in police custody, let alone black people dying in police custody. But it was just, you know, watching that video is just fucking harrowing, man. Yeah, and I know a lot of things have been said about, you know, you read a lot of stuff online and that sort of thing about it, and you see people's, you know, virtue signaling, as it's called, although, you know, that just becomes a blanket statement as well, doesn't it? You know, that becomes an all-encompassing blanket statement for anybody, you know, who's, you know, white and wants to help out or whatever. I think this is definitely an issue that needs to be, A, supported by the white community, and B, the white community needs to just, you know, listen and open your fucking ears for a bit. You know, instead of trying to shout louder, you know, like to prove that you're not racist and that you support that. And that's very, you know, that's very admirable, if that's not a patronizing term. It's admirable that a lot of white people are getting behind the Black Lives Matter movement, and that's great and that's fantastic. But I think when, you know, you don't want to just listen to black experiences with this, try and learn a little bit before you start, you know, shouting out. And I'm, you know, I'm the same. I'm not saying I'm any different from people. But look, just try and learn from their experiences, you know. Instead of shouting louder and then taking over, almost like taking over the movement, because that's not the fucking idea, is it? To you know, the whole idea is not to legitimize that movement by having, you know, white people, you know, shout louder than anybody else. I think it's a time, for once maybe, where white people just need to open their ears a little bit, listen, and with regard, you know, I saw, I don't know, there was somebody who posted like the video from Candace Owens or whatever, and she's not a particularly popular figure. I think she's like affiliated with Trump and the right, but it's a different black perspective on things. And surely, I don't know, it's just like, surely that's, although it's an opposing view from whatever the norm view is, you know, it's still a black woman's opinion on stuff. And it was like white people shouting down that opinion. There was just something that just didn't, you know, sit right with me. And I'm not championing her as some sort of, you know, that everything she says is like agreeable or whatever. Because obviously she's quite a controversial figure within the black community. But I think, you know, there was something about white liberals shouting her down that that just didn't sit right with me. It seems like they've just fucking missed the point a little bit. And it's getting back to that, you know, like, you're either on one side or you're on the other side, and you can't, you know, life's, you know, it's more complicated than that. I think the point she was making was definitely he wasn't, you know, the ideal martyr. That's what I got from it anyway. Maybe I've misunderstood it. I don't know. But it's but on the opposing view to that, he has been a catalyst for demonstrations and bringing it to the forefront. So, you know, it's, you know, it's not just one fucking opinion on stuff. And I think all of, you know, there's not a general consensus. Obviously, like, you know, these things are like horrendous and that sort of thing. But thinking that all black people think exactly the same is, I don't know, is somewhat troubling to me. It's like saying all white people think the same. You know, everybody's got their opinion on something. Your opinion may be slightly different than something else, but that does that mean that your opinion isn't valid and should be shouted down by white people? I don't know, man. There was something, there was something that I didn't, that just didn't like sit right with me with that. Let's have a little bit more tea. We're getting into this now. We're getting into this. So yeah, there's obviously been a lot of demonstrations and stuff since that, and that seems to have spread around the world, which is a good thing. It's still early days, obviously, with regards to this. This is still quite raw that's happened. It just seems, I don't know. It just seems there's certainly something within American society and British society as well. I don't know. I know people say as well. This is something else I've got an issue with. Whether you agree with this or not, let me know. When people say it's just, somebody's, all it is, and I think I've been guilty of this in the past by just saying, well, it's just somebody's skin color or whatever, isn't it? But that sort of like diminishes the, seems to now, sort of like diminish, you just don't, a whole culture down to the color of their skin. You can't just diminish a whole culture down to there. When people say sort of like, oh, it's just the melanin in the skin, or it's just, okay, man, it's just skin color. Or people who say, like, oh, I don't see color. Well, it's fucking right there. I've always said that. It's right fucking there. That's it. I am a white guy. You know how you know I'm a white guy? Because I'm fucking white. But just saying sort of like it's oh, it's just, the color of people's skin or something like that, that it just diminishes like all the culture, the fucking, art, history, all of that black people have contributed to society a little bit. So it's not just skin color. It's everything. It's culture, it's art, it's politics, everything. Science, everything that black people have contributed, and that whole black culture, which is, which is at risk. And I know people say sort of like, I just think it diminishes it a little bit. Like when you just say it's just about skin color or things like that, it diminishes a little bit. I know that's why that guy died, why George Floyd died, because of the color of his skin. But like, there's more, there is more to, oddly enough, to state the fucking obvious, there's more to black people or more to white people or more to people than just the color of their skin. There's a whole culture there as well. I'm probably, preaching to the converted here, people. I don't know. I don't know. It just seems, it's early days with all of this. I don't mean like with the Black Lives Matter movement. I mean with the catalyst that has been George Floyd's death. Along with everybody else's deaths that has happened at the hands of police over there. I think what's most shocking about it is it is the police, particularly over here in the UK, where we've got that, happy Bobby on the beat sort of like attitude to, less so these days because they look like fucking commandos walking around the place. But you've always had that, 1960s heartbeat, happy fucking Bobby sort of like thing over here. And, they're meant to protect and serve. It's written on all the fucking police, police fucking vehicles out there to protect and serve, isn't it? And for someone who has that responsibility within the community to be, basically executing community members or members of that community, like in public, whilst being filmed as well, and knew they were being filmed, you'd have thought at least they'd step back a little bit. I don't know, man. Like I was thinking about this the other day, and like there definitely seems to be massive racial divides within the US. I don't think it happens so much over here, particularly where people are living. I know there's certain areas in certain cities like London. You have traditionally sort of like black areas, Brixton and places like that. And, you've got the northern part, which is the Jewish part, and predominantly Jewish in that. But not a lot of, like here in Northamptonshire, there isn't particularly those sort of areas. And traveling around the country and that sort of thing, there's not particularly, I mean, you have certain towns that have certain, like they have certain racial high percentage of a certain race who live there. Luton, there's predominantly a lot of Asian people who live there, and where else is it? Is it Bolton as well? And there's lots of it, but like very much it seems more over here, a lot more integrated than America does, where you've got obviously predominantly black areas, predominantly Hispanic areas, and places like that. From my understanding, anyway, and from my experience, and that's all we can ever talk about, baby. So yeah, it just seems, I don't know. This episode isn't going to cure anything like that. I think like the main thing that we all need to do is just listen to each other a little bit more, not shout each other down. I know there's people out there fucking extreme views who are racist. I know there's people with extreme views, but the majority of us, I think, are pretty okay with everybody. We all just want to get on with everybody. We just want to have an experience and have a good life, and don't really give a shit about that sort of thing. But it's like the everyday little things, as I was talking about on the podcast the other day, not to fucking bring in my experiences or make it all about me, which is, what we're sort of like, almost like predisposed to do these days with social media and that sort of thing, to show how it affects us, as a white person or whatever. Well, this is what I've done to fucking, with racism. It's never enough, is it? Because clearly it's still around, isn't it? But I think, it's just the everyday shit. We need to start picking people up maybe on the fucking little mild shit, because that's the shit that breeds, isn't it, into the fucking bigger stuff. I don't know. It's a very complicated subject. Obviously, it's early days for all this. I imagine this is going to go on, and this isn't just my attempt to go, oh well, I've talked about racism on my podcast. That ticked off. I don't have to fucking talk about that again. I don't know. It's just, it's kind of fucking soul destroying a little bit. Your heart, you just have that sort of like empty feeling in your fucking stomach and shit. I think all we can do as white people, not to define that, make that fucking definition between, these subcategories we put ourselves into all the time, which seems to fucking just get us further and further away from other people, don't we? Oh, you're straight, white, male, you're fucking cisgendered, you're fucking trans or whatever, you're in this box over here now and you're in this box over here, and you just get further and further and further away from each other. We need to start bringing those boxes a little bit closer, I think. People have been saying some interesting things. I think the Will Smith one was quite poignant, that he came out with, that racism isn't getting worse, it's just getting filmed now, which was, quite, not to say that a meme won't stop racism or anything, because I don't think it will. But it's quite a poignant quote, that is. with how it's suddenly become visualized. And I think that's part of the thing about watching the video of it. It suddenly becomes real. You know, like I said, for a white guy sitting in a chair in Northampton in England, it becomes very fucking real when you watch that video. It becomes, you know, not that you're like, oh shit, I wasn't aware that this was happening, because everybody's aware that racism exists, obviously. But, and maybe that's the way that, something good can come out of this fucking horrendous fucking thing that's happened. And hopefully, you know, like this, it's going to go on, isn't it? I mean, like, you know, all we can do is show support. But I firmly believe that. I firmly believe that this should be, obviously, the Black Lives Matter movement should be led by black people telling us about their experiencing, what they've been experiencing, and educating us. So educating white people, and not white people fucking, you know, charging on through, proving that they're not racist by out shouting everybody else and taking control of the situation, because that's, you know, that's just going back to what we've always done, baby, isn't it? That's just, you know, fucking, we'll take control of this, don't you worry about it. The fucking Me Too movement, hey, yeah, we'll take control of this, we'll support you. Now we're fucking, you know, taking control of that. It just muddies the waters a little bit, you know? It just muddies the waters too much, and the fucking message gets lost. That's it. That's what I firmly believe. We can show support in everyday life. I've seen fucking comedians who have never fucking spoke about race on stage. Never spoke about it, never talked about it, never even fucking approached the issue, because they haven't got a fucking, or just people, you know, not being honest. You just going on stage and just for a clap going, all racists are bad. And it becomes like a fucking clapping at the end of a fucking song. You know, it just becomes an instant gut thing of, yeah, all racists are bad. And then everyone fucking forgets about it and goes home. You know, and nobody comes out with anything, you know, important or poignant or something memorable that people can take away with them. You know, some of the stuff like that Chris Rock's done, Dave Chappelle's done, people like that, about race, that people that fucking can change the way you look at the world. Nobody's ever done fucking shit like that over here, really, that I'm aware of. You know, it's always that sort of like, you know, playing to the crowd or the liberal audience of, yeah, all racists are bad. You know, I don't know, people. What are we on? We're on 28 minutes. Let's have a little bit of tea before we wrap this up. And in no way has this been solved, people. I'm just like saying my opinions on things and things I've seen so far. I think what it is, right? Here's my little maybe philosophical end to it all. Not end to it all, obviously, end to this episode. People say that we're born in this world with nothing. That's what they say. We come into this world with nothing, and we leave with nothing, and everything in between is, you know, whatever it is to make the most out of life and stuff like that. That's it. But the truth of the matter is, we're not born into this world with nothing. We're born with a whole historical fucking backdrop that happened even before we were fucking born. Shit happened before we were born that we're going to have to deal with in our life. We're born, and then somebody puts a fucking backpack on your back and goes, right, you're going to have to carry this shit around with you for the rest of your life. This is it. Here's a bit of racism. Here's sexism. Here's homophobia. Here's transphobia. Here's everything that the past generations have fucking built up in this backpack for you to fucking walk around with for the rest of your life. And our job, this is our job, as I see it in life. Our job is to take all that shit, put it on our back, walk around with it, and every now and again, fucking just get rid of it. Just get rid of a little bit of that, a little bit of that, a little bit of that, and a little bit of that. So the backpack that we fucking give to our future generations has a slightly lighter load. And then hopefully from there, they can lighten the load, they can lighten the load, they can lighten the load. Because none of this stuff is going to be solved overnight. It's not going to be solved in a generation or 2 generations. It's going to be down that road. And if each generation can just lighten the load a little bit more for the next generation, I think that's, you've done your bit. I know we want it to be cured instantly, but, in reality, it's not going to be, is it? And that's coming from a white guy, obviously. I don't know. Could you get any more white-splaining than that? I don't know, people. I don't know. Anyway, we're on 31 minutes. That was episode 113. If you want to abuse me in any way for any issues I have brought up on this podcast, I'm sorry it's not been that much of a fun episode, people, but, every now and again, we're going to discuss important stuff. And no doubt we'll discuss this later on in the week and see how everything's been going and how things are progressing. But if you wanna message me or anything like that, it's just podcast@benbriggs.co.uk. I shall be back with a Saturday's episode, either Sunday or Monday, I think. I might just give myself a little bit of time to do a little bit of reading, people. So have a good week, motherfuckers. I'll speak to you then. Take care.